All right, ladies and gentlemen, as I mentioned at the very beginning of the video, joining me today is Christopher James. He is the founder of A Warrior Cause, and he is also involved in Earth United. You might have seen the interview that I did with Jesse Casanova, and I said I was going to be interviewing Christopher today, and here he is. Christopher, I appreciate you taking the time to come on the show.
Nice to meet you, Rice. Thanks so much for your time and your effort to bring an incredible truth forward and light to this world at a very, very important time.
I agree, dude. And I'm just humbled. I appreciate what you're doing as well. I mean, it's just the right people coming together to build strength in numbers, because when enough people take a stand, nothing can stand against we the people. It's a beautiful thing.
Yep, it is. And it's so true that we need this truth right now. This world has never needed truth so much right now because of all this corruption that's going around it. And as we get into this interview here, again, this is not about Christopher, nor is it about Jesse. What we're bringing forth here is a very, very, very powerful truth. And this truth is so powerful, it is going to knock the crap out of all this corruption. It's going to expose so much that's going on in the courts, and there's going to be a massive hard reset that occurs worldwide. This is our moment, and I believe there's a reason why we've all been connected at this particular time. We're all here on this earth at this time to bring this truth forward and to truly correct something that's been going wrong in our world for a very, very long time. This goes back over 1,000 years, what's actually compromising the consciousness of man today.
Yeah, I mean, I've been looking into this and researching it, and it's definitely it's mind blowing when you really look at it. You look at the deception, how deep this goes, how patient and a long game these people are playing. Whoever they are, really. But before we get into talking a little bit about the core of the message, the one thing I am familiar with you about is that you're a common law specialist. You're in Canada. Can you kind of give me a little bit, and everybody else who's watching who may not know who you are, a little bit of a background?
Sure, Rice. Without sounding like an I Love Me story.
No, but
Yeah.
it gives people an idea of who
Yeah.
you are.
Yeah, well, my background, I'm an open book. Long story short, from a very young age, I was involved in the music industry. Music has been my life. And from like 13 years of age, I began working in recording studios. And then I was in college at 17, out at 19 with a degree in recording engineering. I started working in the top recording studios in the Toronto area, world-class studios. Once I got to a point that I knew that I could work anywhere in the world, this is going back now 20 plus years, I decided to branch out on my own, sort of a one-stop shop. I have a background as a writer, producer, engineering. I play drums and piano. So I'm basically was able to be injected from conception to completion at any part of a project and bring my talents and that to it. That was my passion. That was my love. As we started to move forward, I wound up getting into general contracting because I walked away from the studios to basically get a bunch of money together to open up my own world-class recording studio here in Northern Ontario. And what happened along the way is that in 1995, Napster came along. For those of you that may not know who Napster is, it was basically a death kernel for the music and entertainment industry, because as the internet was coming online then, a lot of people can't imagine what this world is like without the internet, especially the younger.
I'm 45, so I'm very aware of this time period you're talking
Yeah.
about.
So, and that's why this message, I hope, also reaches the younger generation, you know, in the 20s and 30s, because these are our fellow men and women that are going to have to really step up here and join us in this fight that's before us. So anyways, a long story short, I realized in 95 that, sorry, I should
You're
shut
fine.
that off. I realized in 1995 that the industry was going down the tubes. It was going to be wiped out. So I saw an incredible opportunity. It was going to happen through technology, me and my research. And I created an initiative that was to launch in 10 countries, a $1.5 billion initiative that was going to totally change and revolutionize not only the music and entertainment industry, but it was also going to bring a light forward to this world. See, I always thought, Rice, that my purpose and why I was here was through the music and entertainment industry, my professional background on that side, that through music and that, and my skills, that's how I was going to bring certain truths forward to this world. Now, back then, I knew nothing about what we're actually going to talk about here today, this massive truth. But it was this journey that I went on. And, you know, if those of you that have seen the motion pictures, Lord of the Rings, Alan Lee flew over specifically. He's the conceptual artist. He won all types of Oscars and awards for it. Incredible man. He's the one that you visually see of all the creations of how the castles, the environments that they did digitally, that all started on paper with him. He did thousands, over 10,000, I think, drawings for those movies combined. Just an incredible man. And I reached out to him because of this initiative I was doing, again, launching in all these 10 different countries. Each community had to represent the culture consciousness of what we were doing. So again, a long story short, he came over here, he flew to see me. He offered his services to me for free at the end of once we went on site where I had originally secured this temporary site for this initiative to launch in Canada. And I was completely humbled at that point, Rice, because at the same time, he had been asked to do the movie Troy by Brad Pitt, and he turned it down.
Oh, wow.
Okay. And he gave his services to me. Now, what happened shortly after that? This is in 2003 when he came over here. It was shortly after that. Now, again, when my initiative started, all my business plan models, when I was putting this out to people, I was doing this before there was a Facebook, before there was a YouTube. I understood where the market was going with a subscription base. And at the end of the day, my initiative would have generated, without even breaking a sweat, $20 billion a year. Right. And we were going to
Wow.
show the world where all this money was going. The name of the entity was Soulcore Entertainment Group. There was a consciousness fund, what was the third part of it, and a global consciousness fund. And ultimately, our entity would have put a cap on our profits. We would show in real time where all the money was coming. This is this new financial architecture that I was sharing and showcasing with the world, because we're able to do that through the internet.
Hmm.
Right. I saw where it was going on a very basic subscription base. And that was only people subscribing for $5 a month. Okay, and worldwide they have access to multiple facilities, et cetera, see artists from conception to completion. And then what happened after that is that I guess you could say I came in contact with the evil in this world that I knew nothing about, because my background was in the music and entertainment industry. I did not know anything about the creation of money. And obviously, if I'm going to launch a global project like this, and I'm going to be the CEO of it, which I was, and the founder, then I have to obviously understand the monetary system on a global level going into multiple countries,
Hmm.
which is something I could learn along the way as the development was going. I was surrounded with great people. Well, what happened was I came, I guess you could say, in contact with the Federal Reserve. And then that's when it was like a punch to my gut. It was my life's work. Everything that I did, I realized that it was never now going to come to fruition. I sat with the Prime Minister's office twice here in Canada. I achieved something with the Algonquin people that this country does not know about. I secured 2,000 acres with them, with an airport, 3 lakes, all in the span of about 6 weeks. And why this is so important in Canada here, the federal and the provincial government can't even so much as disperse of a half an acre to these people because of all the lies and the convoluted stuff that's occurred beforehand. So this is an incredible feat that I did. And this is what was always reaffirming to me that my creator, that what I was doing, I believed I was on the right path. So when I realized that my initiative was never going to go forth, Rice, it was devastating to me. It was further compromised because my mother and father, they put everything on the line. They didn't have a mortgage on their house. We had to raise money for the initial man that was putting the initial funding together, and he wound up being a crook, stealing from us, and it destroyed me financially. It destroyed my parents financially. They barely hung on to their house all these years. And then, when that happened, it was devastating for me. I was numb for about a year, but I still kept trying to find a way to make this thing move forward. I would like to point out that Microsoft and Cisco partnered with me immediately when they saw this initiative that I was putting forward. And it is a shame, but it's funny how things kind of work, because when I realized that what was actually going on that we're going to talk about here today, I guess you could say I made a deal with the big guy upstairs. I recognized what was going on in our world. Even though I didn't understand everything, I
Hmm.
knew enough about the Federal Reserve back in 2005. So I basically just said, you know what? I'll correct this in this world. I'll take care of this, but you've got to, in turn, let's make a deal here. Let me see this initiative that I created, because there is nothing more powerful than what I created in the music and entertainment industry under Soulcore. When people see this platform, was off the chart. So I had to walk away from that. It was devastating. And then in the meantime, I got into commercial lending. When I got into commercial lending, that's when I started. Commercial lending is different than getting a mortgage for a home or whatever. You're dealing with people's businesses, and there's a lot of fraud and stuff that's going on out there when people are trying to refinance or secure money through, institutional banking outlets. Going through that process, Rice, I came across an enormous amount of fraud that was occurring against people, especially the elderly. That in turn had me starting to communicate and work with the RCMP up here in Canada, also the OPP and the local municipal police. This happened over multiple years after that. And I began a relationship with them. So I want people to know that I have a background in working with these people. They came to me on some huge cases as well that they were involved in, that I had, let's just say, information on through my journey that was being laid out in front of me. Again, I was completely naive to all this. And one of the RCMP officers, she actually wrote to me, she said, Chris, she says, you're like a magnet for all this stuff. You know, she says, they've never seen something like this before. And I just thought, well, it's just coincidence. Well, it wasn't coincidence, because that's what started to lay the foundation for why we are here today and the journey and everything that I went through. And then it all came to a head is that in 2006, my father came to me with a pension, his pension fund. And the long and the short of it is that Sarah Lee had bought out the company he worked for, Fuller Brush, in 72, and the company Fuller Brush wound down in 92, but Fuller Brush did not pay out the money that was set up in a pension fund for both the factory workers and the staff. They kept it for 9 years. It, you know, went to $17.5 million. By the time my father got notice, that was in 2006, the fund had been pillaged to $1.6 million. So he came, now we didn't know this at then, right? Because Sarah Lee was sending out a surplus sharing agreement so that all the pensioners, they basically told them this, the long and short of it is that we just found a whole lot of money here. You know, it was $1.6 million, and we're proposing a surplus sharing, which means the company keeps 50 of it and the employees and staff keep 50 of it. One problem, Rice, the company had no right or title to it. And that's what I ended up finding when I did my investigative work. That's why I said all my investigative work, I did deep research for 20 years to get, you know, the Soul Corner thing, Soul Corner Entertainment Group up and to run. But through that process, I'm also learning other things. I said, once the Federal Reserve got exposed to me, it was a huge moment for me. That's when in 2005, I started really drilling down, and I have over 55,000 files, I guess you could say, in my vault today that I've actually kept. And most of it is in video, it's in print, it's in news articles. And this is what my consciousness is founded on, based on, because I went across the whole spectrum in our world, from everything from medicine to off-world to on-world to finance to military to technologies to health, right, to law. And that's what founded me, what I'm going to be able to tie into now here beautifully, is that when my father came to me with his pension matter, it was in 2010. He had already received notice in 2006 about that this money was available. And he said, Chris, they're still not paying it out. Many people then were in their 80s, 90s. I mean, a lot of the pensioners had died. That was the ultimate plan, you know, let them all die, then they don't get the money. Right. So when I became involved in 2010, that's what really pushed me forward. And I started learning about legal and stuff. And the whole thing came together. I started to understand about the unlawful trespass. And then the lawyer that I retained, who one of the top guys in Canada, Jeffrey Adair, Queen's Counsel. This man is one of the top 500 lawyers, and I trusted him with all my work that I brought to him. To show you the magnitude of this, he was a lawyer at the time of 41 years, okay? When I brought this to him and his attention, I already done all the investigation work. I handed it to him on a silver platter. He said to me, he said, Chris, he says, you must have missed something. You had to have missed something here. This can't be what you're telling me. Well, as I mentioned to you earlier, I live in Burlington, 45 minutes outside of Toronto. I take a GO train in and out of Toronto to see him. I left his office. I was only with him for 30 minutes. So I'll leave this with you. Look at it, Jeff. Get back to me. I didn't get my arse back on the train, and he's calling me. He's saying to me, oh my God. He said, this is the worst case, he says, I've ever seen, that he's ever seen. What unfolded after that was a lot of, again, I started to learn about this legal world. He ended up doing an end run on me and the pensioners. There was a $240 million claim. For $120 million, two claims that was filed against these entities. Would have been the largest class action suit in Canada's history that went down. And I had these people by the jugular. There were multiple government agencies that were involved in this. And at the end of the day, he threw me under a bus, and my father was murdered to keep this from coming to the forefront. He was in the hospital. Like I said, that's another story I can talk about, but at the end of the day, the long and the short of it is that he was murdered. A doctor appeared that we never saw before, and they pulled him off all his medications, and they put him on this medication called amiodarone. I can't pronounce it too correctly. Sorry, my mouth is a little dry, but it was never approved by the FDA. The doctor came in and pulled him off all his 10 other drugs, and then he started collapsing in the driveway a few weeks later. And then this what led me to understanding, so people understand, my father was a sick man for 30 years. He worked for 41 years for the Fuller Brush Company as their credit manager, and he worked in the plant as well. And just to show you how little that these people were paid, after all those years, Rice, his pension was $3,600 a year.
Oh, wow.
Nobody can survive on $3,600 a year. My father had 7 heart attacks, 2 triple bypasses. He died twice in my arms over the years, and they brought him back. So I want people to know that, because everything in life, truth, is based on the foundation of from where it comes. So by you having me on the show today, which I am incredibly grateful for, the people need to understand who this man is that's before them, okay? Don't take what I take as gospel. Go out and research what we're ultimately going to talk about here today. But it's important you know the foundation from where I came from to why this truth is now being presented to you here today. Because what I set out to do is, when all this wrong and harm happened to my mother and father surrounding my global initiative, I vowed to hold everybody accountable that did this to them. Then this pension case came along and I got involved with a bunch of lawyers, corrupt judges and everything. And then I learned you can't sue a lawyer, you can't sue a judge, you can't sue a police officer. Why? Because they're fictions. They're legal fictions. But what you do is you sue the man or the woman under common law. And people don't understand the different jurisdictions that we're going to get into here. But I'll just wrap up my background. It was through this incredible journey of my family being completely destroyed and then ultimately my father being murdered. I brought him home. They said he was only supposed to live for a couple of days in the hospital, and I managed to keep him alive for 7 weeks. But unfortunately, the damage that they did to him with that drug in the hospital, I couldn't repair it. And that was using the cannabis oil. It was incredible. As soon as I gave him to him the first night, Rice, we could do a separate show just on that. I'll just tell everybody at home. I told all the doctors I was coming into the hospital with this oil. I was going to administrate to my father. I was sleeping in the hospitals with my father every night. I was working during the day and I was staying with him in the hospital every night because he was burning up from this amber odor and it was burning him inside and there's nothing he could do. Once I gave him that oil, all the burning and everything stopped. The very next morning, this is a man who was supposed to be dying and within 48 hours, 72 hours, as they were saying. He had a blood pressure of 120/80.
Wow.
Okay, huge. So this is the other side of me that I bring. It's not just about the truth surrounding common law. When you must go to my website, awarriorcalls.com. Hopefully you'll put it up in a link here.
And we'll have it linked down for sure.
And you all need to subscribe. Not from a monetary perspective, but you need to subscribe, get into the site so that we have you in a database so that we can start to begin these paramount and important communications to the world right now, also through Jesse at Global Earth United. But well, Warrior Calls is where the nuts are, so to speak. That's where the truth lies. I've laid it out there for my fellow man. It was created for everybody, initially under common law. But then what happened is that this whole, I won't use the word so your channel doesn't get dinged.
No, you're good. You can say COVID-19 all you want. You can say pandemic. I don't play by the rules. So.
Okay. That's great. I just like to do it just because this information is so important. We can get around it. I like to say C19 and then it never gets flagged and then this truth stays out there, which is the most important thing. Having said that, it was through this journey, Rice, that I went through with my father, seeing him get wiped out and then they killed him. And then this is all surrounding these pensioners. And then at the end of the day, these lawyers went back in and they never held Sarah Lee accountable. They never held him accountable for one single penny. $240 million was filed as a claim. And I've got it in writing that Sarah Lee caved. They admitted in writing a year before, and yet this lawyer walked everybody back in. And that's when I made a promise to my father on his deathbed. I said, Dad, I'm going to hold all these people accountable that did this to you, right? That's when it began for me big time in 2010. That's when I started drilling down to find out what the hell is going on in this world. And what I'm about to share with everybody here today, with you, Rice, again, I thank you so much, is the most important truth in our world. Not because I'm bringing it forward. It's because you need to understand that this gift that's being given to you all right now in this world, it came through this journey that I went through of enormous wrong and harm for my family. I was doing it to correct the wrong for my family. And then I realized when the curtain really got pulled back that, oh my God, this is the most powerful truth that every man and woman needs to understand. Because when they get this, our world is going to change overnight like you would not believe. We are going to be able to hold people accountable properly. All these public courthouses are corrupted because they've got a society that resides within them called the bar, which we are not part of, that has taken over our public. That's a key word, Rice. People need to understand the difference between public and private. If it's a public courthouse, then no man or woman at that public courthouse has the right to block you from seeking justice to administrate your court and claim through that public courthouse to seek remedy. Okay, but what's happening is that we have a society that's moved into our public courthouses that is only based on legal. So let's start right there. What's the difference between legal and lawful? Real simple, and I'm going to give you incredibly powerful truth right here and now. Legal only applies to that which is incorporated. Lawful applies to unincorporated, which is a man, a woman, or people. Those three things only. Not a person.
The person would fall into corporate entity.
That's right. You are not born a legal person. These are not common legal countries. These are common law countries. Okay. The person was created. So let's talk about what the person is. This is the big truth that everyone needs to understand. When you go to my website, there's 4 foundational videos. They're called foundational knowledge videos, parts 1, 2, 3, and 4. They're short, they're sweet, and they educate you on the trespass that has occurred against all of us when we're born. And that's what we're going to talk about right here, right now, real simple, and it's very powerful. When we're born, Rice, unbeknownst to us, when we're lying in a bed as a hospital and our mother and father are filling out paperwork in that hospital, they are not told what is actually occurring with that paperwork that they're filling out. What is actually going on is that the moment that we are born into this world as a man or a woman, we have no paper attached to us, right? There's no
Right.
contracts that bind us to each other or anything. We are simply born free and we are sovereign. Excuse me. We have full dominion over this earth, as it says in Genesis, that came from our creator, right? So that's how we come into this world. But what is happening immediately when we come into this world? From our very first breath, we are being killed on paper. And people say, well, what do you mean we're being killed on paper? Well, there's a trespass that occurs, right, when we're born in that hospital. That paperwork that your mother and father are filling out, that is where a legal person
It's created.
/ corporation in your name and our names, which is our property, is created. Okay. And the evidence of that is go and look at the birth certificate that you were given. Okay. The birth certificate, the bottom line, it has nothing to do with you. You didn't create it. You had nothing to do with it. You're only moments old lying in a bed. And what you will notice on the birth certificate, the first thing is that the name that you were given, you're going to see is in all capital letters. Okay. Remember, when something is capitalized, it diminishes the capacity of a man or woman in law. And that's why, you only use when a great little thing that Carl Lentz does that I think is fantastic is when you write to anybody, you only use the small letter I. Why? Because the I still has the head on it of the man or the woman, right? Remember, when something is capitalized, when you learn capitis diminutio, which is all on my website, in Roman law, that through capitalization, you're diminishing the status of a man or a woman, okay? So when you see your name in all capital letters, first thing you need to know that does not represent you, okay? That has nothing to do with you. That's a corporation that was created in your name when you were only moments old, your parents weren't told, and it is that corporation that this system relies upon to trick you and fool you when you walk into our public courthouses. Go and look at every filing that's ever been put in from the legal society. Okay. The legal society, you always see at the top, whoever the parties are, you are always going to see the names are in all capital letters, or in the minimal aspect, you're going to see that last name. Our last name is not our given name. A last name is a family name. You weren't given that. That existed before you came here. It's like a clan name. So when people say, what's your given name? Well, my name's Christopher James. Those are my given names. My last name I keep to myself because that has nothing to do with who I am. And when you're dealing in law, when you access these public courthouses, Rice, when you walk into them in the correct capacity as a man or a woman, and you do not leave that square. So what's happening in our public courthouses? Well, because of this trespass that happens when we're born and this legal person and corporation is created, it's no different than if I create documentation, Rice, with your name on it or whatever, and I've got a corporation, say McDonald's, and then I send it to you a few weeks later, and it's got, McDonald's logo on it, it's got when I was born, but then it's also got a second date on there that it's very important people realize. In the birth certificate, there's a registration date. Now, what was registered? The registration date is always 3-4 weeks, whatever, after you were born.
It was.
What is being registered? Well, what is being registered is that corporation. Okay. And if you look on the back, which we have in Canada, which many people have found out about, 5 years ago, I did an interview on that channel. It's a YouTube channel that did a 2-hour interview with me. And back then, 5 years ago, I uncovered and I exposed, and completely using the screenshots of how you go about the process of acquiring that hospital record, but then also showing you the trespass that's occurring through the documentation that you're, applying for online here. They call it Service Ontario in Canada here, where you can get this information. But what happened is through this process, obviously the powers that be noticed that I had started to out and expose this corruption that's going on, because they were stating, do you want the long form birth certificate or do you want the short form birth certificate? What is it that you're reapplying for to have sent to you, right? The original copies. Well, when you get this long form birth certificate that you applied for here in Canada, when you get that document, nowhere on it, Rice, does it say birth certificate. There's your first tell. Okay.
Wow.
But the wallet size one, the birth certificate, yes, that does have the birth certificate written on it. So there's that right there is telling you that they're two different documents. And people need to understand, we'll go back to this again. I'm throwing a lot of information at everybody, but God bless, through the internet, they can download this and listen to this over and over again so it sinks in. Okay, when you're born, you are no man or woman's property. Nobody can place paperwork over you and bind you to it. And that's what's ultimately happened in our world, because as we've bought a house, a car, a boat, a motorbike, or even property, what identification have we used? We've used the identification that was created by, here's another keyword, the service corporations that are out there today. Start using the correct terminology to describe these so-called governments. The United States is a service corporation. The United States is not the the United States of America by and for the people. This is what everybody needs to understand. It's the same in Canada. Canada is a service corporation. We, the people, do not own it. All of this stuff goes back to where all of these corporations got set up To fool us, it goes back to the Pope and the Queen and the central bankers a very long time ago. All of this system, we were born into this, Rice, you and I,
Yeah, I
right? Our
know.
mother and fathers were born into this, and our grandparents. These are the things that, again, the birth certificate, it was the new system that they were coming into, compromise the consciousness of man. That got brought in 1934 in Canada here, and roughly in the 30s for everybody around the world.
Right.
This is what the central bankers were all bringing in. So you say to me, Chris, well, wait a second, I should say this word too. The word law, which David Straight, who you've eloquently, we talked about a little bit earlier, who I think is an absolute incredible man, who I'm going to be doing an interview with hopefully in the near future as well soon, who I've learned stuff from as well. He's part of this global collective, incredible people that have been at the forefront of common law. And I stand on the shoulders of giants, but I'm also very well adapted in my own approach and how I do this. My approach on this is slightly a little bit different than David's. It's a little bit different than Anna von Reitz and a little bit different than Karl Lentz. Those three names that I just gave you, those are the three of the most incredible people in your country right now that are at the forefront of common law. They understand what's going on. They understand this trespass that occurs against us all at birth. And that's why the most powerful thing that you're able to challenge when you go into these legal court systems is the jurisdiction. Jurisdiction means control, right? But jurisdiction also means what the bar is not taught in is that there's three jurisdictions in this land. And that's why, in this world, that's why the word law is not a pretty word. It actually stands for something. Each letter stands for separate jurisdictions. L stands for land, which is common law. That's the 10 Commandments, the law of the land. It's the law that's unwritten. We know the difference, don't we, Rice, between doing right and wrong against our fellow man. We don't trespass against them. We don't administrate their property without right, and we don't damage their property. And aside from a contract being in place between a man or a woman, then there is no standing that there's no ownership, there's no control that you have unless someone has trespassed against you. And I guess I should say, before I talk about the three letters, what law represents, let's first also talk about the three most important words. This is my work that I've done, that I've drilled this down onto. And there's three words that people simply need to master. When truth is present, very few words are required. Remember that, okay? It's not some cute slogan, it's truth. So the three words are trespass, property, and who, okay? Anything that you're dealing with in this world, if someone trespasses against you when you're doing court filings, that trespass covers everything. Fraud, theft, they damaged your car, they're in breach of contract, whatever it is. Even if it's terrorism, whatever it is, you only use that word trespass, and then you can identify in brackets after it what the various things were. And property covers everything. Property is your rights, it's your hopes, it's your dreams. It's not just physical items. It's everything that is exclusive to you, which is also your children. You never refer to your children as children when you're dealing with these corrupt courts and child protection services. Those are your property. And that's the only word you use to describe them. And when you identify them in court filings, you simply put a number. If, say, you've got 3 children, you go 1, 2, 3, and you'll simply put the picture of each of your property there and there, if child protection service is coming after you. Because the keys of the kingdom are this. First of all, I'll give you the keys to the kingdom after I talk to you about the word law. So we talked about the word law stands for the 3 jurisdictions: land, air, and water. Okay? We are all on the land. The air is ecclesial canon law, and the water is contract law, legal contracts, etc. That's where the world of the bar operates, is in admiralty maritime law. Okay, their jurisdiction is in the sea. Well, then people go, well, wait a second, Chris, wait a second. How can their jurisdiction, if their control is in the sea, how can they bring us into a public courthouse and represent us and go through these legal processes if you just told us that legal doesn't apply to a man or a woman? Well, now you understand how they're doing it. Yeah. First and foremost, here's a key word: represent. You're not saying it correctly. It's represent. So what is the lawyer representing you as? He's representing you as that fiction, as that corporation, as that legal person that was created when you were born, that you have nothing to do with. Why? Because that corporation, that legal person, is bound to the codes, rules, and statutes of that service corporation that created it. See how simple that is to understand?
Super
Go
simple.
back and listen to what I just said there. I've just given you the nuts of that trespass that's occurred and how it's being applied to us in these courts, which is massive constructive fraud. Because what they're doing, it's an unlawful conversion when we're born. Write that down, people. Unlawful conversion. What does that mean? They're converting you from a lawful standing on the land to something that is not lawful, which is where? The sea. That's right. So now you're becoming a legal person. Now that's what they do in their system. And one of the maxims in law is let those deceived be deceived. Okay, and that could be the mantra for the bar, because all our fellow men, and it's not because, to every man and woman that's hearing me speak right now out there here today, it's not because you're ignorant, it's not because you're stupid, it's not because you're lazy, it's not because you don't give a shit. It's because you were never given the truth from the moment that you were born when you came into this world. Your parents were never given it. Your grandparents were never given it, because this conversation that you and I are having here right now, this is the conversation that's going on around the world. This is the simple truth that we're bringing forward, and also with the remedy to hold these people accountable and do a hard reset at our courts. So I told you the 3 jurisdictions of law. Now you understand what a lawyer does. He represents you as that legal person. And you will always see in their filings, they may try and do upper and lower case, but always the last name is always in upper case when you're at the top of the filing. I don't care about the body of it, but you need to understand that you need to look and recognize what is going on, because a long time ago, people knew that when they saw, if they saw their name in all capital letters, they knew that had nothing to do with them. We were never taught as children to write your name in all capital letters in school, were we? No. So why is that being shown on these court papers? And now everybody understands what happens. Now everybody understands the massive trouble the bar is in. Okay, these lawyers are in a lot of trouble because they are liable. And many of these people that are wearing the black robes, they're going to be swinging from ropes, because they have destroyed people's lives based on this constructive fraud upon which they've been relying upon to move their legal proceedings and steal from we the people. Remember, they're all paid for by we the people. So that fraud alone is occurring in our public courthouses. Why? Because they have an oath to their society that is private. It's a private society. You and I do not belong to it. Let me drop, I know I'm rambling here, but it's good you let me go, Rice, because
it makes complete sense, and I'm enjoying it.
Oh, well, I love it. Thank you so much. So let's get into another real nugget that we'll put down here for you. First, I'll give you the keys to the kingdom. All you ever have to say when you go into a public courthouse, if there's a legal proceeding that they're moving against you, you attack the jurisdiction, and you do it by first walking in, and you've already put in ahead of time your correct ID. This is what I teach people how to create on my website. Yes, there are longer pages than that, but it's not a simple wallet size, because you want to make damn sure that when you file that paperwork in ahead of time, everybody knows in that courtroom the capacity in which you're appearing. You're not appearing as this legal person, because they're going under the presumption from the paperwork that you're showing up as surety, for that all caps name, for that corporation they created when you were born. So when you put the paperwork in ahead of time, showing that you are the actual man or woman coming into that court, oh, they don't like that. But you stand on that square in that court, and then you would simply say to them, are you looking for the creator or the created? And when you say the word created, you hold up what? Now you know what the created is. You hold up that birth certificate, because their entire court system is operating under that presumption that you're going to be liable for that birth certificate. And once you clarify that separation, that man or woman that's wearing the robe, they're your public servant. When I go in there, I'm very honorable. I don't argue with them. I'll argue with them if I have to, but I do it honorably. But I've already put my words to paper ahead of time through a notice of how I'm appearing. I'm addressing that this court has no jurisdiction, and I'm requiring it for whatever reasons, whether they've caused me wrong or harm, to restore my property. And there's that big word property that comes up there, because ultimately you would say to that man or woman, once you establish that you're the creator, not the created there, you are actually the most powerful one in that public courthouse at that time. See, a court cannot proceed forward if they don't have both, how should we say, teams, we'll say people on each side in the same jurisdiction. So to give an example, say the legal world represents the baseball league, right? The baseball players, but I'm standing there as a hockey player. You can't move forward with 2 different teams, because there's 2 sets of rules that apply, 2 separate laws that apply to those entities. They're different things, but they have to trick you and make you a baseball team in order for their system, their legal system, to move forward. And when you put the correct paperwork in ahead of time, and you stand your ground on that square at who you are in that courtroom, you're simply addressing who is the man or woman that's coming forward here with a verified claim that I've trespassed, causing them wrong or harm. 9 times out of 10, there isn't anyone, right? They're hauling you in under statutes or codes or some other bullshit that's going on. And I say this up front as well. If you've caused wrong or harm to your fellow man or woman, I don't care what system you go into, you deserve everything you damn well deserve. Okay, I don't help people that have wrong or harmed my fellow man or woman, but I will help anybody. Well, I could in the past. Now we've got a much bigger thing that we're doing. We're helping the world here get through this, corruption together. But I will help anybody that has simply been caught up in this system, that they've trespassed, because that's what they're doing. They're trespassing against all of us under the color of law. Right? You walk into this public courthouse, you believe you've got all your rights. And so when you use a lawyer, I didn't finish up on that, that's why he represents you. He's presenting you as this legal fiction. And that's why it's like he's holding your hand coming into courtroom, because you're a child, okay? Because you're not able to comprehend what's going on in their legal world, all right? Now you understand the game that's being played, and that's why a man or woman never uses a lawyer. You fire them on the spot. Okay, because they're also liable to you. They've been taking money from you, billing you for walking you in and committing constructive fraud into that public courthouse. And when you start to really understand the magnitude of this trespass that has occurred against us at birth, that's where it's so huge. So now we come to the here and now, Rice, and this is why I'm ultimately here. We're here for two reasons here today. At least I am, and I believe you are so as well. Well, three reasons. The first thing is we have a C-19 lie that has been brought out here months ago that is destroying our world right now. This is what the central bankers are using, that they're pushing down through all their service corporations to implement all this terror, from staying at home, social distancing, got to wear masks, mandatory vaccines, mandatory masks, okay, all this crap that's come out of nowhere. And they've had to continue to do this. Why? Because the mortality rate, since they said that this was a pandemic, has never materialized, as doctors
Right.
all around the world are screaming about. So
Well,
what we
the
have in front
doctors
of
that are
us,
being
right?
censored, though, unfortunately, it's the ones that YouTube is like not allowing people to hear their voice. That's why I'm done playing the game of like trying to not worry about what I'm saying. It's just a matter of time when they kill my channel, when they kill your channel on YouTube. And I'll tell you about some platforms that I'm involved in where I have my sites up, where I have all my videos on multiple sites that are on like decentralized blockchains. So it's a beautiful thing. YouTube is going to do what they're going to do, but we're going to make sure the message gets out regardless.
Yep, you're absolutely right. And so, like I said, I'm the same way set up as well with all my videos, because you have to do that. But again, we all know in this world that there is no greater connectivity than YouTube. YouTube's
Right.
got an amazing platform. I mean, when you can live stream to 1 million people, you don't have to have the infrastructure at your own personal residence, wherever you're at, to be able to handle that type of data and communication. That's the beauty of YouTube. So for me, what I do is that if I'm going to have some stuff that's really, really sensitive, that's why I don't use the words, but I ultimately put it up on BitChute, and Brighteon is going to be the other website I'm going to put it up to, and people all know to go there, because we have to, for whatever reason, we've got to stay in the game with YouTube. I have to,
Yeah.
because that is the way that we've got to use everything at our disposal, Rice, because this is a war right now.
I
All right.
use the tools of the system against itself to be able to push people to these other platforms so that when my voice is shut off, people know where to find my voice.
That's right. And it's very powerful. So that's why this, we got off a bit on the law side of this trespass, but this is ultimately what people need to understand, is that this is why I was originally coming forward. And then when the hammer dropped, so to speak, in October, November, my website was actually supposed to have been up last November, but a guy screwed me around for 2 months. And then through the grace of God, again, a gentleman by the name of Sean reached out to me, and he put my website together for free at no charge, who I'm going to pay eventually once I get, donations and stuff enough to pay him. But just an incredible man here in Canada. He stepped up. He did a great job to help me, because my website's been set up simply so that people can work their way through the various tabs. And by the time you get to the end, you are going to have acquired enormous truth, enormous knowledge that's going to allow you to understand this next phase that we're about to enter into here globally, and accessing and gathering around our public courthouses and moving these claims surrounding the trespass that happens at birth. Why? Because because when the truth is present, everything is very simple to understand. We're here for the first and foremost reason because of the COVID lie. We know that, C-19. We have the evidence, the concrete evidence, firsthand people that have been there. Dr. Judy Mikovits, I did an interview with her a little over 4 weeks ago, and I'm holding this back at this time because it is so powerful that when this comes out, yes, she's done powerful videos before and documentaries, but when this one comes out, this is going to drop the hammer down on them. Okay, this is going to be very powerful to expose what is actually going on in this world. And this is the problem, is that Judy has gone through 8 lawyers, I believe she said to me. Of the 8 lawyers she's gone through, Rice, not once has she been able to place this truth onto the public record, because she's being blocked. Why? She's in the wrong jurisdiction. She's using lawyers. See, the whole lawyers are all involved in all this. That's how they ring fence to shut the truth and actual real justice from achieving and
That's
being,
interesting.
at our public courthouses. And that's why this is so huge, because everyone now knows the difference between public and private. I'll give you an example. It's so simple, is that when you are in front of anybody, like in the court or whatever, you simply have to say, when I get their name of the man or woman wearing the robe, Bob, am I property of Bob? Say that's the man or woman, the man wearing the robe, and he's going to say, he's going to avoid it like the plague. But you require. That's another powerful word. Require means demand. Okay, so you can say very powerful things to these people, and these people that wear the black robes that are in the higher up courts, they're listening for key words that they know control them. That's why property is a huge word. No man or woman can administrate another's property without right. Okay, I'll say that again. No man or woman can administrate property without right. So that man that's wearing the black robe, he's acting in a role. The minute that any of us act in a role as a police officer, a fireman, a judge, a baker, a garbage man, it doesn't matter. A secretary, the second that you act in a role for the corporation you're working for, you have no rights. I'll say that again. You have no rights. People say, what do you mean? Well, you have duties and obligations within your corporate structure, which you have to abide by. Only a man or a woman has rights in this world. A judge is a fiction, isn't it? That's right. And the hierarchy when we came into this world is, just so you all understand, also shown on my website, is that our creator God, whoever you believe your creator is, I don't get into that conversation, but we all know we came from a creator. We all know as a fact that whether you believe in God or not, if you're an atheist, that we are all born equal. All right. We're all born equal under the law, and we are not property of another man and woman, and contract makes the law. And that has never changed, Rice. Right
Never.
now, when you and I are sitting here, it's just we've been confused with all this paperwork that's been created around us that has compromised our consciousness over the last, 20 or 30 years that we've been consciously able to, understand what's going on in this world. So when you go into these courts and you say to that man, am I property? They say no. Then you hit him with the second one. And who can, if we'll use his name, Bob again. And Bob, who's the man or woman in this courtroom or anywhere that can administrate property without right? And they're going to say no one. That's right. Right there, you've established the jurisdiction in that court, because none of these people have jurisdiction over you. The only way that judge is supposed to be an independent party. He's not supposed to be acting against you. He's supposed to be sitting there as the referee. Okay.
Right.
So at that point, that's when you say, fine, where's the verified claim that I've caused wrong or harm to another man or woman, or I breached a contract? Who's the man or woman moving this court? Well, there's not a man or woman moving their courts. Right? It's always fictions. It's always the title of their service corporation, or in Canada here, it's R, which they just use the letter for Regina for this woman who thinks she's some queen. Over in England, R versus. That's another thing. There's no verses in common law, because when a man comes forward and he files his claim, which is what? His property. See how this starts to get powerful? When you understand that claim, what you file into that public courthouse is your property. Anybody tries to mess with it, it's called trespassing on the case. And you call every man and woman out in there, excuse me, I require the name, remember that means demand, of the name of the man who claims that I am property here. Well, they're going to say, no one's going to claim your property, Chris. That's right. Well, who could administrate property without right? And they're going to say nobody. See, you got them right there at the court clerk window. Then you're required to accept my filing here and move this process through this public courthouse like lightning. That's what they're supposed to do when a man or woman appears. But when you go to the public courthouses, they're pushing their legal forms across the counter to you, in the same breath saying to you, we cannot give you any legal advice. Well, now hopefully everybody understands that a man or a woman doesn't require anything that's legal. You don't require legal advice. You don't require a lawyer. Okay, unless you're a corporation and you've got these massive contracts, that's what lawyers are there for. There is a place for them. There's a duality that exists within our public courthouses, okay? The legal world is supposed to exist there, and the lawful world. But we don't have the lawful world existing there, do we? No. We only have a legal world, and these are great people that are working in these courthouses. Remember, I also say this too, I jump around a lot, and that's why you can go back and listen to it, but all of us, Rice, all of us in this world have been lied to from the very first breath that we took. So you have to take the higher road as the man or the woman and look across that counter at those people. I actually feel sorry for them, because they've been put in a horrific position. They've been shown and trained there's duties and obligations. This is the processes that they have to follow in order to move these court actions, these legal proceedings through a courthouse. Here's another powerful, simple truth, okay? The law that you bring into that courthouse does not follow process, okay? Process always follows the law. And yet in the legal world, they are forcing process on you in order for you to find some sort of remedy, which there is no remedy. You're just going into an abyss, an empty hole that they're going to take all this money from you, and you might get something out of it at the end of the day. That's why they have to have a few people that win. It's like a casino, they have to show people like, looky, this is working. We do have success cases in these court systems with the lawyers, blah, blah, blah. Well, everybody's looked around the world long enough now, Rice, and we've seen that there is no justice. And this is why there's no justice, because we're not bringing a man or a woman into a courthouse simply that is trespassed. That's the only word you got to say, causing wrong and harm. This is why you understand how powerful it is that once we gather, this is what we're going to do. And how I set this up is that my original plan for this is before this COVID stuff came online, is I was going to be doing this in Canada on my own. I was going to bring out this truth under the common law. Because police are waking up to this now too. I want to tell people the police are starting to come on side. I'm supposed to be having some communications with them later on this weekend. And that is huge because they need to understand this. They need to get this, that they've been lied to. They've been horrifically lied to because these are the people that put their lives on the line every single day. They never know when in a moment their life is going to change. And have I been trespassed upon by these people working for service corporations that provide so-called law enforcement? Absolutely.
Yeah, we all
And
have.
they cause, everybody has and they've really come at me over the years, especially as I've been trying to fight through the system. That's what was confusing for them, Rice, because they knew me working with them through these various court cases, fraud and that I was doing. And then all of a sudden I turned on a dime, right? I said, hey, look, a man or woman doesn't require a driver's license. And that was, 10, 15 years ago when I started doing that. Now I'm at a place of incredible knowledge. I guess you could say the weight got lifted off my shoulder after chewing on this for so long. I finally found a very powerful vehicle because I also knew it was important for me to be able to explain simply to my fellow man and woman, as hopefully we're doing here today, what has occurred when you were born in this world, why it's important, that trespass, how that affects law, how that affects our public courthouses. So you don't need to understand law, the legalese, codes, rules, statutes, processes. You need to simply understand one thing, that if a man or woman trespasses against you, you access that public courthouse, and it's always the same few words, I claim the wrong of trespass, identify what the trespass is, did cause me wrong and harm. I require the immediate restoration of property, and if there's damages, you've got numbers for, you've got bills that you can show it, and then you put that in there. The claims are less than one page, the actual, statement that's in there, but we have a system that's in front of us that when that paperwork goes into it, these honorable people that are acting as staff, as court clerks and administrative front end officers, they're not trained in this and they don't know what to do with it. So what do? They hand it to the people that are wearing the black robes, and the black robes, most of them do know what it is. Justice of peace don't in Canada here. They're just these morons that are appointed. Their personage appointed is basically by the service corporation. They don't know a damn thing about law. They've been trained in the process. Again, they're simply trained in the process of what's going on and to revert back to code, statutes, rules of regulation. That's the other thing I didn't finish on. It's another powerful one. Here's a huge nugget for everybody. The rules of civil procedure. Okay. Write that down. The rules of civil procedure is what is a set of rules that are promulgated by a society, again, to which we do not belong, called the bar. The rules of civil procedure do not apply to I, a man, or any other man or woman that is outside of their society. It's powerful. And if you want to nail that home, you require them to bring forth the public law with your wet signature with contracts. It goes back to contract that you've consented to these rules and regulations and processes that were created outside of your complete knowledge or awareness apply to you. And if there's no contract that exists, then none of that crap applies to you. That's why the bar is terrified, because when you walk into a public courthouse and you move a claim under common law and you get it in front of a jury of your peers, remember that man wearing the robe, he is your public servant. In a proper common law setting, he's not sitting up above you. That's all been designed to, do a psyops on people in there of intimidation. You see it in all the motion pictures and movie works and cop shows. There's this judge and he's a real hard guy in there, and he's ordering people around, and he's executing justice in this court system that we're seeing. It's all theater that's going on at the end of the day. In a common law court, that man or woman that's honorably there acting as a judge or a justice, I believe it's only a justice that we have that acts in the common law side because their oath is to the people in the land. Again, back to the jurisdiction. That man is off to the side of the table. Also sitting with him there is the court clerk, because this is a court of record. No different than a regular legal proceeding. This is being recorded. That's what a court of record is, that everything that's being spoken is being recorded on the record for the public record. So that man now wearing the robe and the court clerk, they are simply there, and any other staff, to bear witness to my claim and my court. It would be the James court that I would move forward against people who have trespassed against me. And I lay out my evidence of where they've trespassed, they've caused me wrong or harm, and then they also have the right to defend themselves with their paperwork, or if they've got evidence to counter it. And we present that in front of a jury of our peers. And it is the 12 people of our peers that make that decision, whether my claim be true. There's another word, claim. Claim trumps a complaint every single time. A claim is a man or woman coming forward stating that this is true, that this is what happened, and you're standing there under full liability, that if what you say is wrong, you got to understand the common law is brutal. Okay, it's lethal if you are going to try and mess with it. So if I came into a courthouse and I made a false claim against a man that he had trespassed against me, pay attention. I always use those words. I don't say much more than that. He trespassed against me. He caused me wrong or harm. And then it's found out that through the court proceeding that I lied. Well, then that jury can turn around, and whatever I was going after that man for, they can apply to me and even more. Okay. That's why you need to understand it. You're simply laying evidence and facts down because you have faith in your fellow man, that they understand simply the difference between right or wrong. And this is where no legal terms, this is where no case law and all this other crap that gets brought into a court where the average juror is sitting there, the man acting as a juror, they're going, oh, this is above my head. They're trying to say, okay, well, he's proven that this does apply to this rule or code or whatever, but it's not simple for the jurors to understand. And again, the jurors are under the control of the man wearing the robe, unless they do a process by, again, they can abdicate and basically, they can basically ignore whatever a judge is ruling, and they can take control of that in the legal world as well. But at the end of the day, that's what I have to say to David Straight, that I love so much about, as he eloquently teaches and shows people, is that jurisdiction is the foundation for all these courts. That's all you have to challenge, that they're operating in the sea, and that a correct corporate, and that they have a presumption, a false presumption of who's before this court, and that you require that this court, if there is a verified claim before it, is brought under the land under common law. But you see, the judges in this world, they're terrified of this. Why? They let any of us sheep get out of their pen, it's game over for them, and that's what's coming, Rice. The end is coming for the bar, and it's long overdue. They are never going to attack a child again in this world, right when they get brought into this world, and they are never going to do any wrong or harm from the elderly. That's what I mean through the commercial lending work that I went. I said even the pension case work, I had contracts with just over 40 people, and these were all elderly people. And with these lawyers, there was multiple that I was up against, a judge, multiple government agencies. What they did to these people, like I said, my father died before he saw a penny of any of the money that he was owed, and ended up going back in and stealing more from the pension fund. That was the part that slayed me of all of this, is that, that's what really, really set me off. So that's when I began on this journey to hold these people accountable. And I'm like a dog with a bone. I've kept my head down. I've learned a lot of truths. I've helped people for about the last 10 years through the court systems in various levels, from criminal to traffic or whatever. And I started to become successful in stopping these cases before they even went into the court, because how I was writing, communicating to that man or woman that's acting as a Crown attorney. Remember, they're acting in a role for another corporation.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you're property of that corporation, not a damn thing that man or woman puts pen to paper applies to us. And again, it's under the color of law that they've fooled everybody. And again, when I say the word everyone has been lied to, and when I say the word that I loathe the bar and I want to see it liquidated into oblivion, that is not the people. That is the institution, that is the corporation, right, and how it's been set up. Let's be perfectly clear about that, because we go back to, remember what I said? Everyone's been lied to, including people that are acting as lawyers. And again, you have a very broad spectrum of consciousness within this legal field, these bar members, because a lot of them have been lied to, and they're not consciously aware of what we've talked about here, but there are those of them that have been doing it for a very long time that are. I'll give you an example. When I was sitting with Jeff Adair, I told you about, 41-year lawyer, top guy in Canada. You can look him up. He's in the top 500 lawyers, Queen's Counsel. When I first brought to him the attention of I got it right here, actually. This is the original birth certificate that I was given when I was born. Okay, it has nothing to do with me. But when you would flip it over on the back, there's supposed to be a red CUSIP number. Mine wasn't. You go to my website, and you'll see in those 4 foundational knowledge videos, the short ones, you're going to see where I outline all this. And I went back, reapplied, and then you see that CUSIP number. What is a CUSIP number? That's a number that's required for any corporation or company to be bought or sold or registered on the stock exchange.
Right.
Full stop.
Mm-hmm.
What the hell is a CUSIP number doing on a birth certificate if that's supposed to represent I as a man or woman? See, it's right in front of your face.
Well, you have multiple CUSIP numbers too, because you're in the United States, you have your social security number, then your court cases are 9-digit. Everything that you're dealing with is CUSIP numbers. And yeah, just that, when you try to explain that to people, some people just don't get it. But what I do enjoy about this conversation that we've had is that a lot of the information I was already somewhat aware of, but you've explained some things that have definitely been very enlightening, especially like what you were saying about going into a court and how to handle yourself as a man or a woman, as a people. And I do try to teach people that the word people is also singular. It's not just a plural word. So I am a people and we are a people, which is a beautiful thing. And I think that, I can already say, because I know you got some things going on, so we're going to wrap things up. But I do know that we are going to have a whole lot more conversations. I'd like to do something with you and Jesse. I'd like to start introducing you and Jesse to some of the people I'm working with who are trying to learn some of the same things from, like David Straight, Anna Von Reitz. I've learned a lot from Romley Stewart from Justinian Deception. Just recently made really good contact with him. So hopefully I can get you two in contact with each other. I definitely want to help try to make the David Straight interview with you happen, because I would love to hear the two of you talk, because
Oh yeah. I
I,
would welcome that. Please bring us both on together. But if I can, because I know we're short on time,
mhm.
the thing I had to get home here, Rice, it is more important than anything in this world right now. Why am I here?
Why are
Okay.
you here?
I am here because of this colossal lie that's been brought out surrounding the C-19. Okay. That is the first and foremost thing that we must ride out collectively as a world right now. And we must fight it head on with the what? The truth. Well, who has the truth to all of this? Judy Mikovits, Dr. Judy Mikovits, who I did the interview with 4 or 5 weeks ago. Okay. Yes, she's been all over the internet, but her evidence has not been brought into that public courthouse correctly and brought forth to the world. We're having all this theater occurring within the mainstream media that's, again, corrupting the consciousness of people. This is where this argument is all being, hashed out in the mainstream media, which is completely corrupted.
Mhm.
Where the truth is supposed to reside, where we deal with justice, where we deal with horrific wrong and harm as a trespass that has occurred against us, is at that public courthouse. Because the same people that trespass, see, now everyone will understand the simplicity of this. The same people that created this documentation, the trespass when we were born, the central bankers, the Pope and the Queen, they are the same people that are behind this C-19 lie. They're the ones that have been engineering all this. They're the ones that are giving out the orders. They control the mainstream media. They control the governments. Remember, they're able to push this message out. So they use that tool of fear to instigate and infiltrate our consciousness and create this mass fear, which we're witnessing right around the world. And that fear is existing because our fellow men and women do not have the knowledge. They've been kept from them. So in order for us to take this down, because this is serious, they're coming to kill all of us. Okay, with these vaccines that are coming out, it's been evidenced by hundreds of doctors now. You're just not hearing it. I've got the evidence here. I'm going to start bringing it forward too. But what we have to do is, the first thing is we've got to address the COVID-19. That's why I'm here. How do you do that? You do that, you fight it with the truth, which is what Judy Mikovits got. She's going to give all the evidence, firsthand evidence, to all the court actions we're doing around the world right now, so that this can get brought in to a public courthouse correctly and filed correctly, and then move it under the correct jurisdiction, so that she is going to get it on the record, and we're going to get Fauci and all these other people brought in under warrants, and they are toast once she brings this truth forward. Why? Because she has firsthand knowledge of it. You can look her up. But the second part of that is okay, everybody understands when they learn that we've been lied to on the COVID, how do we hold these people accountable? They all start thinking, when our court systems or everything are all corrupted. Well, I've just showed you now the truth, what's going on in the court system. How do we correct it? We have a duty as people, no matter where we live in this world, that when our creation, remember, we came into this world as man and woman, as the creators, and we created government. And all government was created to protect the property, there's that word again, the property of man. And then government, these public servants, went and created all these other entities: law enforcement, judges, court staff, clerks, police, legal persons, right?
Right.
That's so when you understand where you stand in the hierarchy, the creator, you are the one that's in control of this. So we have a duty that when our creation, these so-called governments, get out of whack or they're corrupt, it is our duty
To
to
put them in
each other
check.
that we gather, not protest, never use the word protest, that we gather around this public courthouse en masse, and we bring this simple truth of the unlawful trespass that's occurred when we were born into the light. And all around the world, this is going to happen on the same day. And at the same time, then Judy Mikovits' truth is coming in at the same time, and the warrants are going to go out for all these people that have been lying to us. That's how powerful this is. Because if what I'm claiming is not true, and many of these people are going to be swinging by a rope, because this is genocide when you understand what they're doing. They're terrorizing the children. They've killed the elderly with all this masks and ventilator bullshit that was
Well, the
all
Georgia
lies.
Guidestones, I mean, it kind of spelled it out.
Yeah, the Georgia Guidestones as well. It's on my website. It shows you right there. The eight. Actually, the Guidestones isn't there. I've got the Forefathers monument, which is absolutely a must. People must look at this short video. It's incredible on my website. It's absolutely beautiful, because at the end of, I don't want to spoil the end of it, but when you get to the end of it, you'll realize, just how powerful that truth is. And this is what's been kept from us, right? These foundational truths. This conversation that you and I have had today, I haven't used any very big words. I've kept things, I think, pretty simple. I might have talked a little fast. I'm sorry, people, if I do, but again, time is of the shortness. What you can always do on YouTube, if you don't know, is you can select in the settings menu, you can slow the speed down,
Or you
a
speed it
0.5%. Just do that. What I do, mine's on full throttle too all the time, so I can blow through things if I got to listen to people. But don't do that with our interview here today, because as Rice has mentioned here, you've been given some incredible truth, some incredible knowledge, not conspiracy theory stuff.
No,
So
not at
what
all.
I'm doing right now, as you might have heard from Jesse, is I began to do this light, to bring this light to the world, to get the 100,000 people surrounding a courthouse here in Canada. And the people that surround that courthouse, I'm going to be shoulder to shoulder with law enforcement. See, this is about everybody. Everybody is affected by this. And we are
Everybody, yeah,
collectively going to
absolutely.
go into this courthouse honorably, courageously, and we're going to correct the record. And when that hard reset comes in that moment, we're going to share it. We're going to stream it live to the world in all these countries that this is happening. The very same paperwork is going into every courthouse around the world, because this is why this is powerful now. This is what it's built up to. The trespass that has occurred against all of us, that horrific trespass when we are born in a hospital, has occurred against every man and woman in this world, Rice. And think about the power when they all understand that this has been done to them. It's been done to their children, right? That's why we don't own anything, because you go and look on title of your mortgage of your home or your car or your boat or whatever you've bought, you're going to see your name is in all capital letters, whatever configuration it is. As you spoke eloquently again about that, there's multiple CUSIP numbers for a driver's license, a health card. Every time you see your name in all capital letters, but it's in different configurations, that's a new corporation that was created unbeknownst to you, and it has a whole other back end of corruption behind it. All of that stuff is going to disappear. All of that stuff is going to be destroyed. And here's the big part of it. What happens if, for example, that you've been under the constructive fraud, you've been paying, say, a debt on a corporation that you never were required to pay, i.e. the IRS or the CRA in Canada here. All of that money is going to come back to us. See, this is the big picture. We are talking about trillions of dollars coming back into every country that the central bankers, the Pope and the monarch have been stealing from us for over 100 years. Okay, that is fact. Anna von Reitz filed a verified claim. Hers was a $290 trillion claim, I believe, that went against the United States, this entity that was been masquerading against the Queen and the Pope and that, and it has been verified and it is out there. But the problem is that our court structure is still operating under a legal capacity. And the moment, this just has to happen once in our world, Rice, and everyone out there, the moment that we bring that light in surrounding the trespass and we execute a common law court, remember, we're gathering as our duty and we're bringing a truth in there because we're correcting our creation. Okay, our governments, these so-called service corporations, what are not our governments, but we'll call them that for now. These service corporations that are providing government services are completely corrupt from top to bottom. And I believe in the people that are working in these service corporations. Why? Because they've also been lied to. They are simply going to be able to correct everything within their system that they've already created now that's all discombobulated and convoluted. They're going to create it simply once they understand this foundational truth. They know that they don't have jurisdiction over a man or woman or their property, and they can never administrate property without right. See how powerful that is?
And it's so simple, man. That's why I feel like it's, when I told you before we started recording, there's a reason why people like me and you and me and David and you and David and you and Anna, and how all this thing is just coming together. I mean, the way that I told you how I met Jesse and then how I came about meeting you, or how I met you and then met Jesse. It's just very serendipitous is all I can say. I've just stopped believing in coincidences.
Yeah.
Well,
that's ultimate. Yeah, so that's why we're here, Jesse, Rice, to just kind of wrap this up for you. This has been a wonderful opportunity for me to share and have this wonderful conversation with you, and I am truly grateful. And everybody needs to know that this is not because it's not about I or Jesse or Rice here. We want everyone to drill down on this truth, put a light on what we're showing you that has happened to all of us. And we need to come together en masse now around this world, because we're doing the same thing in the United States. We're going to surround a few courthouses with law enforcement, with 100,000 people minimum, hopefully millions, that are wide awake to this trespass that's gone on. And the second that gets into that courthouse, it's game on. I get goosebumps every time I say it, because I have already seen this happening. I know that this is going to happen in our world. And when Judy Mikovich is actually brought into a courthouse, I would like to have David Straight and Carl Lentz walk her in arm in arm, right? And they've got the simple 2-page claim. Everyone needs to know that the claim that goes into the court, everyone's going to have it all ahead of time. We're not going to have people outside these courthouses, Rice, that are going to be ignorant. They are going to be fully cognizant and awake to why we're there. They're going to know about the trespass, and they're going to understand that we're going to secure this courthouse, and we're going to protect Judy Mikovich and the truth, and we're going to bring it forward to the world. And when that happens, look out. Like, again, this cabal that we're up against, they've had power for a very long time. As JFK said in his 1963 speech, he tells everybody they have political, they have financial, they have military. Right? They have enormous amounts of resources that we are unaware of at their disposal, because our entire militaries now have all been corrupted because of this cabal that's had control of everything for a long time. And it's only through this simple truth that we're going to right this wrong. And it's not going to be an easy road. I hope to God it could be an easy transition. It is from our point, because we're not showing up with guns. We're not protesting. We're not arguing. We're not there to burn our courthouse down. We're there to bring a very powerful truth that is going to provide an enormous hard reset that's going to stop in its footprints this lie surrounding C-19, and it's going to stop the trespassing and all this theft that's occurring against we the people, and all these people that have been locked up in these jails that have truly never caused any wrong or harmed anybody. They're going to be let out, like marijuana charges, all this other kind of stuff.
Right.
Because that's
Victimless crimes. Victimless crimes.
That's right. So in closing, I'd just like to say, hopefully I do wish to come back on another talk. I would love to do a talk with David and you on this show at the same time, and Romney as well out in Australia. I say to people, these people have done incredible work, Romney, Stewart, them, Justinian deception, because they've drilled down on the syntax. They're showing you from a visual aspect the wordage that is actually being used.
Mm-hmm.
My side of it is that it's not a rabbit hole. It's something that people should, and again, Romney's done an incredible job of it. You can watch a handful of his videos that are specific to it, and you'll see what he's talking about here. He drills right down on where their words and how their processes are going to. But at the end of the day, when you walk into a courthouse, you don't want to have your mind filled with all of that information. It was as simply as I explained to you there. It's common sense. Right? When you're addressing, when you understand how their court's moving, you don't need to get into all this other fancy stuff. You just simply need to have a few sentences on a piece of paper that establish who is the man or woman standing before them correctly with your document before them. Remember, in their world, it's the paper that moves their world. So anything that you say on paper, that's the only thing that comes out of your mouth. Exactly what's on there. And if they don't understand it, you tell them to put it in writing to you, and you respond back to them in 48 hours. But everything you have to say before this court is in that notice, and it will say that you require them to either produce obligations or contracts or evidence upon which they're relying that this court's jurisdiction is true. See, it's real simple when you understand what's going on here. No man or woman has jurisdiction over another man or woman. Remember that. But the minute that you allow them to cloak you as a person, a defendant, an applicant, all these various different legal terms, if they're using those against you in a court or whatever, then you know that they do not see you as the man or the woman, their creator before them. That judge was created by you. Remember that. And he is under your jurisdiction. So that's why you have to correct the jurisdiction honorably and stop their proceeding. And again, this is the beauty of jurisdiction, is that in common law, there is no statutes of limitations, right? The statutes of limitations, for people that don't know, in the legal world, is that you have 7 years to go back on somebody. If you don't do it within 7 years, then you can't take them to court. Well, right. There's two things that have no statutes of limitations that operate the exact same powerfully way on both sides, the legal world and the lawful world in common law. And you say, well, what are those, Chris? Well, the first one's jurisdiction. Okay. If you entered a legal court and you went through a legal proceeding and that jurisdiction was incorrect from the beginning, it doesn't matter what the ruling was at the end. It doesn't matter what the orders and all this other stuff that happened. It could have happened yesterday or 100 years ago. That court was moving under the wrong jurisdiction, which voids everything that occurred in it. That's the first truth. Right. That applies in the legal world and the lawful world. The second part, you know what the second thing is that if it's present, Rice? Fraud. If fraud is ever present at any point during the proceedings or up to the ruling that's led, fraud eviscerates all. Okay? So, is there constructive fraud occurring in all these legal proceedings that have come before us here?
Absolutely. 100%.
And they're in the wrong jurisdiction. You get a two-banger there. See how this is so powerful? This is going to undo so much wrong and harm. This is going to restore people's property to them, their children. A lot of children have been taken from their parents unlawfully. Yes, we do know that it is a sick world out there, unfortunately, and there are some parents that do horrible things to their children. That's what those systems are there for. But unfortunately, the CPS has been monetized globally, and they're taking children from homes that they should not be taking based on codes, rules, and statutes that some man or woman didn't, comply to.
It's crazy.
Yeah. So
that's actually one of the things that David Straight's been focusing a lot of his efforts on, is that topic right there. He deals a lot with child protective services, and I think he was doing some task force work with Melania Trump in regards to children and things like that. I don't know all the full details. I've talked to him about some of it, but it's overall, I consider it to be a blessing to be able to have been given this information, to be able to meet people like you and have this information put forth in a simple way so that it can be explained to people easily. Because that's the problem, I think, prior to simplifying it, is it was just so complicated. It was hard to explain to people. But I mean, in about an hour's time here, you've given like so many different nuances of like little things that could definitely just set the record straight. And I think it's a beautiful thing, man. And I definitely look forward to having plenty of conversations with you with multiple different people. And I will have links down below for awarriorcause.com and your YouTube channel. And I encourage
Beautiful.
people to make sure they're subscribing.
Yes.
And anything I'll even just whatever information I can include for people to be able to find your information will be definitely linked down below. And I did let you know, Christopher, that if you wanted to put this up on your YouTube channel, you're definitely more than welcome. So if somebody happens to be watching this on a Warriors Call YouTube channel, definitely check out my YouTube channel. It can be found at RiceCrypto. And again, Christopher, I really appreciate your time, and I look forward to having plenty of conversations here in the future. I want to end the recording and talk with you just 1 second, okay?
Sounds beautiful.
I appreciate everybody for watching, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. Much love.